Welcome and thanks for joining us. My guests today are Mike Anthony, Chief Information Officer for the National Transportation Safety Board, Linda Southcott. She's the Chief Modernization Officer at AmeriCorps, and Andrea Gibbons, the Chief Data Officer at AmeriCorps. Good to have you all with us. And our topic is customer experience and rejiggering systems and rebuilding systems for better customer service, customer experience. And I guess a good place to begin would be with how you define your client, your customer, the person you're trying to reach. And I ask that only because these are not agencies that vast swatches of the public normally interact with, like TSA or Social Security. So why don't we start with the AmeriCorps, a little bit about the mission, which we know and admire, but also what your client is in terms of CX.
Sure. Thanks, Tom. AmeriCorps is the only federal agency that focuses on the power of community service and volunteerism. So we have thousands of community partners. We engage over 250,000 individuals in national service, results-driven service at 40,000 locations across the country, offering service projects for succeeding in school, living independently, rebuilding lives after homelessness, job loss, and also supporting veterans and military families. So we do this service through mainly grant making. Our core business is grant making to those organizations throughout the country that then recruit and enroll these volunteers and these members for these types of services. So the project we'll be talking about for today is about our core system. The clients are the workforce here at AmeriCorps that manage and oversee those projects and those awards, but also ultimately delivering those services to the public and the public-facing side of our solution that folks go to access our national service projects.
And so the grantees are probably pretty well in the middle of that mix, sounds like also.
Grantees, definitely. We've got quite a mix of those types of organizations, and then through them, the members and the volunteers.
Okay, Andrea, anything to add?
No, I think Linda really covered it. I think we have a lot of different customers and a lot of different lenses to look at for how we can support national service.
All right, let's move to Mike Anthony of NTSB. Again, in some sense, everyone who travels by any public mode of transportation is your customer, but you have specific deliverables in different constituencies, whether it's a ship in a harbor or an airplane and so on.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. Every one of us and everyone listening to this is a potential stakeholder or customer constituent for our organization. Our mission is to enhance transportation safety. We have several different communities. One of the key communities, obviously, are accident victims and family members, really wanting to understand what happened. Another community are our industry partners, whether it's the aviation industry, maritime, highway, or rail, pipeline, hazardous materials. If we have a safety recommendation that could reduce the likelihood of another accident, how do they implement that? Obviously, the general traveling public. I think with some of the recent safety issues, I believe individuals are looking at what aircraft they're flying on and making decisions based on that. So obviously keeping the public up to date on what's going on is helpful. And then finally, other federal agencies. We share a lot of information with agencies like the FAA, and currently some of those processes are still antiquated, and with TMF, we're going to modernize that, and I think we'll get into that.
Yes, we sure will. And let's talk about the CX-related funds that you have gotten, the technology modernization funds, which there's still money there, by the way. Even though Congress took away a little bit of it, there's still some money unclaimed. But your agencies have gotten funds for modernization. And so let's again go back to AmeriCorps. What are you modernizing? How are you doing it? Give us a sense of the scope of the projects under the TMF.
Yes, we currently have a $14 million investment from the TMF to replace our agency's grants management system. That's a top priority for our agency in our way of managing taxpayer dollars and delivering those national service programs. So we're developing a new grants management system, trying to bring more flexibility and efficiency to our business processes and our workflows, but also increasing access to those resources for our public constituents.
Well, what are some of the, would you say, difficulties of the existing system? What is it you're trying to improve for? Well, let's talk about people that are doing the grant decisions at the agency, and therefore eventually causing the Treasury to disperse funds. And then I imagine they have a process of monitoring what's going on with the progress of the grant as it goes through its life cycle. So what are some of the aspects of that oversight and grant making that you're trying to improve?
Yeah, our system is over 20 years old. We're working with an antiquated system that has basically, we've outgrown it, and we are having challenges in meeting our business needs and also growing and scaling up as national service is continuing to grow. So we've got some pain points with our current systems where people may be abandoning their applications to get resources for these service projects, where our staff are actually reporting, some dissatisfaction and being able to be efficient in their jobs. We've got a lot of workarounds and some ad hoc processes that allow us to make sure we can meet our mission goals, but continuously dealing with some limitations on an antiquated system.
Sure, Andrea, fair to say that in 20 years since that was deployed, there have been at least probably 2 or 3 updates to the grant making standards, coming from OMB, and that must be a lot to incorporate in the logic that might have been written a long time ago.
Yeah, that's correct. And I think that's one of the big functions of our grant modernization is, while we have different program offices that focus on different grant making capabilities, we now have a way to streamline our business processes, and we're aligning to what is FIBIS, which is the Federal
Integrated Business Framework for grants.
For grant making. And from a data perspective, that's really important because the business processes act upon the data, and that's what gives us the value for us to get to a place where we can derive more value from the data that we collect and get to a place that we can start to do more predictive analytics and to see what changes that we can make to our programs that will then affect the decisions that we make and can inform us or predictively, I guess is a better way to say it. So there's a lot of benefit, and it's a real, I guess it's a real bonus for me, because starting as a chief data officer just 2 years ago to get our data landscape in shape in order to derive more value from our data and become a data-driven organization, coupled with the modernization effort, has made it a lot more simple and a little more straightforward in order to make those changes and really be data-driven.
I was going to say, would it be accurate to say that in the modern age of data analytics-driven decision-making applications, that you would need to incorporate greater numbers and greater variety of data sets into the processes and decision-making systems you need to evaluate grants and effectiveness and so forth, that might be generated purely by that grant in that old system itself?
Absolutely. It gives us a lot of flexibility to bring in either third-party or other agency data to just derive greater value from our data on the decision-making process, and just also for future planning. And it allows us to really see more clearly the impact that grant making is to the nation.
Okay. And Mike, let's go to your TMF project. Tell us about that and what you hope to do with it and what your immediate future steps are.
Right. Hey, we're extremely excited and pleased with the award. We're about 6 months into the initiative, so it's still early. I do have some tips later on if we get to it for other federal agencies who are interested in applying. But let me give you a few examples of how things are done today and what TMF, how that will dramatically improve our customers' experiences. Currently, our investigative data is not centrally located. And because of that, it's not easily accessible or even exploitable for our internal and external stakeholders. We have disparate applications and processes that results in limited information sharing, and worse, some of our investigators have to enter the same data into multiple systems. A, that's not a good use of their time, and B, it leads to errors. We have multiple search capabilities, and quite frankly, none of them are simple, intuitive, or comprehensive. And that's certainly frustrating for both internal and external stakeholders. And then finally, as I alluded to earlier, we have antiquated information sharing techniques with other federal agencies, and it's obviously time to modernize. So with the TMF investment, all of our investigative data will be in one secure environment. This is really going to streamline the management of our investigative artifacts. That's investigation reports, supplementary documents, accident data, and probably most importantly, safety recommendations. We will have a simple, intuitive, comprehensive search, as you would expect in today's day and age. We'll have more data visualization, and that ultimately will lead to, as I think Andrea was just saying, more informed decision making. We're going to have, we're going to leverage APIs and have a more modern, timely way to share information with external stakeholders and partners like the FAA. We're also going to be doing something we haven't done before, and that is proactive notification of when an accident investigation changes. Right now, individuals don't know. They just have to come back and keep looking on the website. We'll allow the ability to subscribe to either a topic or a particular investigation, and you'll be proactively notified when something changes. So I think all of these things are really going to benefit our external constituents as well as internal staff.
It sounds like, in the sense of a case management view of this, that the case, whatever it might be, would be able to incorporate more data, and again, the theme of more data sources than might be initially related to that particular case. Because if you want to do comprehensive analysis, well, what happened in the same case when something happened on that plane or that ship or whatever the case might be, but it's not in this particular case, so that you have more of a data pool underneath all of the case management. And the case is a way of invoking all the data you actually need rather than containing all the data initially that you need. Am I putting it in the right way?
Yes, I would say it supports and enables our enterprise case management environment. And there's another piece to this as well. For all new investigations, everything is appropriately documented in a digital environment. We still have a lot of historical data though that hasn't been digitized, hasn't been tagged. So we're really sub-optimizing the use of that data. So we really need to get the historical data in as well. And that's where I think you really see like a force multiplier, and you can really run analytics, generative AI, all those capabilities on top of that. But you kind of got to make sure you have the data, and you have to have the data quality. And quite frankly, we're not there yet.
Okay, and a lot of follow-on questions, but before we get off the TMF topic itself, maybe let's again go back to the AmeriCorps folks. What was the reasoning behind the TMF application, TMF fund strategy? If something needs to be replaced after 20 years, and they do, wouldn't that be part of the normal appropriation for IT? So there's the toss-up. Now bat it out.
Yeah, great question. I'll take that one, Andrea. Yeah, we are a very small agency at AmeriCorps, and doing a lot of shifting and trying to support the newer initiatives that have been rolling out. We partner with FEMA, we partner with the CDC to do public health AmeriCorps. And so a small but mighty agency, just really trying to make sure we can meet the mission and continue delivering services. We haven't actually had an opportunity in the past to put the amount of resources for this type of project into place. The TMF opportunity also gave us access to technical assistance and guidance from industry experts at the TMF board. So it really gave us more flexibility with the funding, not being limited to like the fiscal year end dates, and having some flexibility and being able to move resources to the different areas that you need. It's technology modernization, but it helps us support some of the non-technology required pieces for this kind of a project. And so that was a lot of the drive behind the TMF investment. We had more flexibility with the time frame we could use it, and being flexible in our approach to implementing the project.
And did you have a payback mandate as a result of this money?
Yes, we did. And I think I know Mike probably had to do the same thing, but we proposed a lower percentage repayment. So ours is a 75% repayment rate for our investment.
Almost like getting a student loan.
Yeah, exactly.
And Mike, tell us about the TMF strategy rationale.
Sure. I spent the bulk of my career with the U.S. Army as a civilian and then with the IRS. So my background is large, complex environments. Coming to a smaller agency in 2020 really opened my eyes. There's just, we have to implement the same or most of the same federal mandates, but we don't have the resources to do it. Often staff wear multiple hats. And as you add more and more requirements onto the plate, some things don't get done, or they don't get done to the quality we'd like. So really, the bottom line is our past and current appropriations simply don't meet our internal and external customer demands. And because of this, we continue to add technical debt, or what I would say is we're digging a hole deeper. And then compound that with the federal mandates, everything from zero trust security requirements, enhancing the digital experience of our customers, to the brand new, hot off the press, AI orders. We needed to do something differently, and the TMF for us is the game changer to enable us to do some of the things we know we need to do anyways. We just haven't had the resources to do it. So that's why we're really excited, because it's really going to allow us to kind of move forward as we maintain our daily operations and do all the other things, but really go after the customer experience that, quite frankly, they've told us. We already know what their pain points are, and that's what TMF is going to address.
Yeah, I was going to ask that of everyone also. How did you know what to modernize and how to deliver this? Because the CX, again, is the ultimate goal here, is to make it better for the users, and then also en route to better management of the funds and the programs themselves. There's a performance aspect to this, but I guess one of the theories is if your people are happier and can more agilely use the system, then the program performance might increase. How did you know? What was the process to know what it is users specifically needed so that there was real measurable CX improvement?
I think, AmeriCorps case with a case management system, to me, is a no-brainer, because that enables so many organizations and individuals. However, in our case, we had to figure out what not to include, because, like I said, there's a lot more demand than there is capacity. So we tried to select some of the most important pain points for each of our various stakeholder communities, something that we could do in a timely manner. And also, we're not trying to introduce brand new technologies or capabilities. What we're leveraging are best of breed commercial technology. So it was really, to me, kind of a low risk pitch, things we need to do anyways, things that are going to improve customers' experience, and something that we're very confident that we can execute on. Because as you talked about, there's some payback requirements, and there's certainly a lot of oversight. So we have a low appetite for risk. So that's kind of how we selected it. I'll turn it over to Linda and Andrea for their thoughts.
Yeah, you're right. It was known. Our customers have told us, our staff has mentioned for years, the pain points with our legacy systems, and just how we've started to really make decisions on our operations because of system limitations rather than the direction we're headed. And that's why it's so important to be able to be doing this together with the chief data officer on having a solution that allows folks to do their jobs and do the transactions, but then building this world of centralized data where the analytics can happen. So we knew, and this is actually, it was adopted as an agency priority in the strategic plan, and we were seeking ways that we could fund and resource the project. And when the TMF opportunity was made, when we found out about that, we knew right away, like, this is a perfect match for this. So.
Sure. And Andrea, I mean, for people to be able to do their jobs better, one of the things they specify is what information they need. And probably it's good to explain maybe now the chief data officer is not the person that's concerned with disk drives and Kubernetes and so forth, but really what is the data needed for this strategy? So maybe tell us more about that.
Yeah, I mean, my role is to make data accessible to whomever needs to use it, right? So that's internally and externally of our agency. So that means data that's of quality and fit for purpose, that we describe it, and it's contextualized, so we can insulate people from using the wrong points of data to make decisions that aren't valid because of that, to make sure that we make it easily accessible. And in our old system, part of the reason the modernization too is we rely so heavily on institutional knowledge. We have a staff that knows everything about everything and where it is and who has it. And so spending so much time finding it, knowing that it's the right piece of data or that it's going to give you your results rather than being innovative, that's really what this whole effort will free people up for, to be able to use data more innovatively, to just even save more time for the agency. And then on the flip side of that is all of our partners and our grantees that provide all this data to us, we weren't giving the data back to them in an efficient fashion. And that's part of not only the open data platform to provide data out to anybody that wants it because it's federal, it was made with federal funds, but also our ability to create some analytics for them and dashboards that are accessible, especially for our smaller grantees that maybe don't have data analysts or architects, and definitely not data scientists when they're small, right? So that we can help derive value. We share that back out to everyone. Now we're in our infancy of really expanding on our open data platform, but that will continue to grow as our grant system is modernized and we have processes that we can just automatically share the data out there and just be a better partner from that way.
And briefly, where are you in the modernization effort of grants management? Is it like Mike is 6 months in, which is like just now, or are you a little further along?
Yeah, we're further along. We were where you were, Mike. We remember. We're actually in the last stage of our project. So we started this in 2022, and that included, a lot of the heavy lifting unrelated to technology, which is the business process re-engineering, and where are we going to standardize, and how do we, align our plans with the future enterprise data management vision that Andrea brought to the agency. So we are in our last phases of design and configuration of the system. We're preparing for user adoption, training prep, and a launch at the end of this year.
So will be a Friday shut off and Monday turn on of the old system and the new system?
I wish it was Friday to Monday. We're actually working through that right now. We are going to have a several-week transition because being a small agency, we also have shared service partners. So we get financial management support from Treasury ARC, and so that's another major integration piece that we needed to put into play for the launch. So, but yeah, planning for that cutover period and going live and making sure we get all of the data prepped, cleaned, and ready for migration.
All right. And just a quick reminder of who is on your screen right now. You can see their names, but we'll give you their titles again. Andrea Gibbons is the Chief Data Officer at AmeriCorps. Linda Southcott is the Chief Modernization Officer there. And Michael Anthony is the CIO for the NTSB. And we talked a moment ago about TMF as project and funding treatment separate from regular IT. What about the methodologies for development, operations, and so on of IT under the TMF? Has that project taught you things that you might translate over to quote unquote regular IT development and operations?
100%. We are leveraging TMF to really drive how we do business in the future. So, first of all, it's complete enterprise buy-in and support from the chair all the way down to every staff member. That includes, as Andrea said, aligning with our agency strategic plans, constant communication internally and externally of project status. A couple things we've done too is we have a formal IT program manager out of my shop, partnered with a product owner out of the business together. They do everything together in lockstep because we really need to, deliver these capabilities as I alluded to earlier. With all the external visibility, failure is not an option. Couple things, technically speaking, we're fully embracing the safe agile methodology. Now we had to do a lot of training and education awareness up front because for maybe non-techies, we're speaking Greek to them. So we've been doing that. I've been on that journey, fully embracing DevSecOps. I mentioned Zero Trust earlier. We're architecting in Zero Trust capabilities now so that it's ready and it's not going to be a bolt-on. And then finally, maybe implementing more of a modular architecture, leveraging some microservices, serverless. We're 100% in the cloud already, so we're going to leverage that. But I think those are some of the things, both from a non-technical and a technical perspective, that it's not just for this project, but any project moving forward. This is how we're going to do things.
Got it. Yeah. So that's all the right words: agile, SecDevOps, and cloud, and Zero Trust. You've got them all in there. Also, for AmeriCorps, I imagine nobody would put something in a mainframe of the center now at this point.
Exactly. Yes. And we're actually we've been moving all of our tech stack over to the cloud, and in our we're using Microsoft Azure environment right now, but we had to do a lot of similar type of training up and prep just to begin moving towards agile principles and agile methodology, and getting folks comfortable with more of this iterative or incremental build and approach for the project. And so very similar to what you described, Mike. We have that was one of the main reasons the Chief Modernization Officer role was developed. Is I have a team that's dedicated just to this project and working with IT, the data office, and the lines of business. Our product owners on my team, but they're representing the business side of the shop. So really helping to liaison and translate those business needs over to those technical needs. And so definitely we've been taking the opportunity to build knowledge and capacity of the staff and the teams that are going to continue doing this kind of work and supporting these systems.
And I want to get to that too, but I wanted to ask you quickly about let's say, the back end of systems, not really the back end of systems, the back end of processes, because in the case of, say, NTSB, at some point there is a final comprehensive report with recommendations on an incident. These are often highly sought by the public as well as by your industry and government partners. Maybe it's a little not quite the same for a grant system, but on the other hand, you do have to do regular reporting and generate that information for Congress, for your overseers, for GAO, for your own agency management. And often that's a big, heavy lift. I'll just make an analogy, Mike. At the Chemical Safety Board, they had a backlog. Some of the reports had not gotten out for 2 or 3 years. New management came in and they cleaned that up. So for explosion of a tank that happened 3-4 years ago, they finally could get that report out, and so the industry could learn from it. Is that part of the CX too? Is making sure that there's timeliness in the summation of these things, again, so people aren't running around gathering data from all over the place trying to fire drill reports together.
We absolutely anticipate streamlining and perhaps speeding up the investigation process. I can't tell you exactly specific metrics, but we also think we can perhaps improve the quality of these reports as well. as I mentioned earlier, not only having all the data, in a secure environment, but also ensuring that some of our legacy data is ingested and the quality is appropriate. We really think that's going to improve the quality of things. So it's mainly about accessibility, timeliness, and then I'm going to go back to the ease of use, because right now things aren't necessarily user friendly. It's not like a Google search, and it should be, and we owe that to our constituents. And then for those individuals who'd like a little bit more elaborate search capabilities, we can provide that. But that shouldn't be the entrance way into our organization. We're also exploring the use of different user personas and really tailoring the experience to each of those main user groups, because right now one size doesn't always fit all. So anyways, but I kind of go back to what Linda was saying. We're still on that education journey. It's not over, and I have a feeling it's going to be a continuous process as well, both not only for internal staff but our external partners as well.
And Andrea, you looked like you were going to jump in there on that idea of end of process accountability and reporting.
Yeah, I mean, obviously our lines of business are different, but I think like what Mike was talking about, I mean, that's part of what we're building out, which is what we call the AmeriCorps information model, but it allows us to really have that search capability across the agency to find pieces of data or data assets that our staff want to use or derive value from. It also gives that ability to take out the technical speak, right? Like, so we have, as part of this process, done a baseline for our controlled vocabulary for the agency, allowing the different program offices to have their own language, but that we map that up. So that's what builds our line of sight. So if you say participant, you're going to see how we look at people. They're either members or volunteers. Volunteers are our senior corps, and members are pretty much everyone else. So you can still have your own identity within your office, but when we're talking holistically, that's a participant. And there's a way to see that and see that easily, which right now we do rely on that institutional knowledge. And so I think that it just kind of flattens things out, and we look at things. We only are making exceptions for the anomalies, right? Rather than allowing everybody to build their own process and then organically grow it. So it's going to make much better data and our ability to bring in other pieces of data to derive value.
Yeah, that's really an age-old problem, is nomenclature and context and the different, parlances of different domains. And how do you harmonize all that in a system so that a given word, a given data element means the same thing across the systems?
Yeah, and I think it also is just helpful to talk to both our grantees or other partners, as well as like OMB and GAO. Like, here is what we mean when we talk in this language in our, our budget reports or anything that we have to produce for the consumer.
Sure. And Linda, how have you kept the new project in such a state that once you roll it out in a few years, you won't have the same situation? This is really brittle and old and we got to replace it. Have you thought about and have you used methodology such that it can be continuously injected with updates and new technology?
Yeah, this has definitely been that long-term vision of, we're probably going to have to replace our system again sometime soon, and probably sooner than 20 years, just with the way technology is progressing. The TMF investment helped us also, I believe, resource that heavy lifting of cleaning up the data, getting to the controlled vocabulary, really looking at what is it that we need, how do we standardize and have that more holistic approach, and track, document, and create that history showing folks how we did it and why the decisions were made, so that when it's time to maybe replace that system, we're not going to have to do that huge overhaul we did after 20 years of not changing the the solution. We're also looking at with the operations and maintenance after launch, um, including strategy for enhancements to continue a continuous improvement role. So we'll have what we know is our standard, need and resourcing for operating the system, licensing, and continuing to use it. But using our agile practices, we already have a backlog of things we'd like to have or things we know we want to work towards for the agency. So we'll always be looking at ways we can continue to roll out enhancements and continue to improve. But with this, we have been intentional in should we expect to do another change or have to change over, it wouldn't stop work. We've got a lot in place to be able to make a smoother transition.
Because you must anticipate the fact that when you do have the cutover, within 3 or 4 hours, somebody is going to have a suggestion, a customer that is, for something to improve.
Of course, of course.
Yeah, and apologies. I would also add, like, we also intentionally decoupled the data from the application layer so that it's much more modular in that sense. So the data is being written and organized in a way in what we're calling AIM, or AmeriCorps Information Model. And so if we do replace our grant system, it just feeds naturally back into the AIM, which is architected for analytics and data processing. So it's more plug and play, and we're not so tightly coupled, which is part of the issue and the heavy lift that we had today. Is so much of the business rules and knowledge were baked in at the database level or in the application code. So to detangle that was a huge effort in order to create the new system.
Yeah, that really takes you finally out of the mainframe model once and for all.
Mm-hmm.
Mike,
Yeah.
that sounds like your issue.
Well, yeah, I completely agree. Decoupling the data from the application layer. I also, Linda hit on being smarter as we plan out for O&M now. Even though we're only 6 months in, our budget requests 2-3 years in advance. We've got to be planning for it now. So we're being more deliberate and intentional. And then, like I said earlier, we're taking advantage of our cloud infrastructure. So that kind of built-in scalability, elasticity already. Talked about components and modular approach of microservices. And then, I kind of have a security background, architecting that in on day one and not doing it after the fact. And I'm also, I approve the authority to operate. It needs to be done. It's not something we can just kind of wave our hands at. So with zero trust, kind of, we're maybe 12 months into the process. We're smarter now than we were. So that's going to impact our TMF capabilities, for the better. So I think, things are really, moving along appropriately. Honestly, it just goes back to what new requirements come down the pike, because we haven't really talked about AI, but that's the current buzzword, and how are we making sure that we're enabling things for that? And I think Andrea hit on it too. If we have good visibility on our data, we can apply these newer tools on top of that, and hopefully make better informed decisions.
Right. So then if you incorporate AI as a way to enable faster results, faster information for your users, then it's incumbent on you to teach them how to prompt AI, because that's really the secret sauce of getting something that's not hallucinogenic or just wrong.
You're absolutely right. I'm going to give you one real simple use case for AI that's not rocket science, but I talked about legacy data. We didn't have the same PII requirements or redaction requirements in the past that we have today. So as we ingest that new data, we need to go through everything. So that's a real simple use case of AI, looking for social security numbers, addresses, unique names that can really reduce the amount of kind of physical touch labor to go through things to allow the individuals to do the things that the AI can't do. So I think there are certainly some AI capabilities that we may incorporate as part of our TMF modernization effort that honestly really propels us into the future.
And Andrea mentioned the syntax and context of words and terms. That must be a huge challenge for NTSB. The word that comes to my mind is truck. It means one thing on the paved road, it means another thing on the rails.
You're absolutely right. So, I mentioned we have an enterprise case management environment. As part of that process, it was really um, our initiative to really standardize on one enterprise investigation process because each of our modes had their own. And that's a big culture change, but we're several years into that. So, I'd say the hard part's over. It's just continuing on in that momentum and not allowing for maybe deviation, only where I think Andrea mentioned where there's anomalies or strong exceptions, but to the best of our ability, being as consistent as we can. And another thing that was brought up, a lot of our very seasoned investigators, can retire. So capturing that institutional knowledge, building it into our processes and our technologies moving forward is only going to help ourselves and ultimately help our constituents. So I think that's really important is capturing that knowledge because especially in a small agency, everything isn't documented. There's just not enough staff to sit there and document and then keep the documentation up to date. So oftentimes it gets built into tools and systems. And that's kind of what Andrea and Linda were describing earlier. So I think that's part of our goal as well.
Yeah, the DC-10 will outlive the careers of many of the practitioners in the air safety area.
Correct.
There's a lot to capture there. Okay, just a couple of more questions. I wanted to ask, first of all, before we get to your ideas and tips for those that want to apply to TMF funds, just maybe summarize what the customer experience you envision for the projects under the TMF will be once we get rolling here. Linda?
Yeah, our goal is delivering simple, secure, and effective solutions in this, digital solutions that can interface easily with the public. Folks know how to access our resources, apply, know what to do with them, and that our folks can meet their expectations in managing those awards and getting those resources out into the community and on the street. So, yeah.
And I have to ask, journey mapping had to be part of this.
Oh, yes.
Andrea, you're shaking your head in violent agreement, as they say.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a huge part of it.
All right. And Mike, for the investigator user, let's get there.
Yes, I'm gonna build on exactly what you teed up there. We're really embracing human-centered design and placing the user at the heart of our processes. So depending on which community we're addressing, wearing their hats as we develop the solutions. But it really is, as Linda said, just simple, intuitive, timely access to information. Whether you're an internal stakeholder or an external constituent, it really shouldn't matter. It's just meeting our stakeholder communities where they're at.
Okay. And I guess the final question would be, what's your best advice for those agencies that wish to pursue the TMF route? Because the money is not gone. It's still there. There will probably be a 2025 and 2026 appropriation. While the politicians argue about how much, nobody's against the idea, as an idea. And so how do you get to that money? What do you tell them?
Yeah, so I just lived through the process. So, first of all, internally, agency leadership needs to be on board. They need to, champion a program, and they need to be committed to see it through to the end. You can't just accept the money and then walk away. You maybe could have done that in the first year of the program, but you can't do that today. From an external perspective, you need to have a really strong business case and technical plan. The TMF team will vet it in several rounds and meetings, and well, we think it'll cost this much, and just really technical discussion. You really need 3 developers or 4. I mean, it was that level of detail. I would strongly encourage organizations to have a solid acquisition strategy. The TMF program is meant for organizations to hit the ground running and deliver sooner rather than later. If you've got to start a procurement, a brand new competitive procurement, my sense is you're less likely to get an award because that could add another, I don't know, 6, 9, 12, 18 months to the process before you even start work. And then the last one, both internally and externally, is continuous communication. We meet routinely with the GSA, TMF, Program Management Office. We're partnered with them, but also internally. So those would be my tips to any organization. And I would also say, do it 100%. You have much more to gain than you had to lose.
And just going back to that acquisition strategy for a moment, then your recommendation, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like use task order basis on existing contracts for services as opposed to launching a greenfield acquisition for a brand new system.
Right. And I mentioned earlier some of the work we're doing is not new or novel. It's kind of like readily commercially available. So we had recently awarded a large IT services contract where it was within scope and we had ceiling. So, and it was also a GSA vehicle, which it was kind of a win-win-win. But I think some organizations might not be in that posture. But if you think you're going to apply, you should be working at acquisition strategy in parallel and don't wait, because I really think that could be a differentiator between two equal proposals. If one has a strong strategy that they can implement sooner than the other one, I think that one might get a little bit more weight to it. Now, I don't work behind the scenes, but that's kind of my sense. What are your thoughts, Linda, Andrea? I think I saw you nodding your heads.
Yeah, I second a lot of what you said, especially the communication and asking questions. I think that the Technology Modernization Fund Program Office is there to kind of help you work through what your proposal is and what you're trying to deliver. For us, it was, I think, very telling to be able to show the public impact of the project. And, we know what we want to do to improve operations in-house and those efficiencies, but really what's that, the return to mission value for us, really, I think, was helpful. So in ways that we were able to show that, a lot of people have grants management systems, and we've got shared solutions in the federal government as well, which we had assessed and evaluated and ultimately identified that we were going to go a different route. And that's where the acquisition piece came into play. We were able to, identify some partners for technical assistance and guidance, like the Quality Services Management Office for grants, the over at HHS, that really helped us look at ways we could align a commercial solution with the federal standards. And so I think that was something that helped our proposal, was the public impact, but also aligning with federal standards, even if we're doing a commercial solution rather than those shared solutions that are available to many.
Okay, Andrea, final word.
Well, I wasn't as involved with the TMF, except for just adding, some more information about how it would make our data posture better and to be able to take advantage of our data landscape. So to that end, I would say that it should be a partnership when you're looking to create your TMF application, and how you can articulate the different value and the different initiatives that it's going to help to progress or mature across the agency, instead of just that one thing. Like we're making grants with our modernized grant system, but it has a downstream effect that's going to make a lot of our processes and our data better across the agency. And so to be able to connect those dots, I think, are really important too.
Okay, well, I want to thank you all for being with us today. Andrea Gibbons is the Chief Data Officer of AmeriCorps. Linda Southcott is the Chief Modernization Officer there. And Michael Anthony is the Chief Information Officer for the National Transportation Safety Board. I'm Federal Drive host Tom Temin. You're listening to Federal News Network. Let's go back to the studio now for more of the CX Exchange.